My name is Iris Waverly. I'm 33 years old, and everyone thought I was losing my mind. I used to be a practical woman, numbers, marketing strategies, deadlines, that was my comfort zone. I worked as a marketing manager for a local tech company in a quiet coastal city. My life was simple, predictable, and peaceful. I had a loving husband, Damon, and a small circle of friends. I wasn't the kind of person who believed in the supernatural or fate, but that was before the accident. It happened on a rainy evening in early spring. Damon and I were driving home from a dinner party. I remember laughing about something trivial, the kind of laughter that makes you forget the world for a moment, and then, out of nowhere, a blinding light. Tires screeched, glass shattered, and my body slammed forward. When I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital with a concussion and a broken arm. Damon told me the crash was caused by a drunk driver who fled the scene. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? After I was discharged, things started to feel different. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, certain someone was whispering my name. At first, I thought it was part of my recovery, maybe trauma or medication side effects. But the whispers grew clearer. Iris, they'd say, faint but deliberate, like a breath on the back of my neck. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling followed me everywhere. At home, I'd hear footsteps when Damon wasn't around. Lights flickered for no reason. My phone would ring, but when I answered, all I heard was static followed by a woman's sigh. I started to question my own sanity. Damon noticed. He'd find me standing in the hallway late at night, staring at nothing. One morning, over breakfast, he said, "You've been acting strange lately. Maybe you should talk to someone." His voice was gentle, but there was a cold distance in his eyes that unsettled me. So, I did. My sister, Liana, worked as a nurse and had always been the practical one between us. When I told her what was happening, she listened quietly, then said, "It sounds like stress, Iris. You've been through a lot. Maybe it's time to see a doctor." The doctor nodded sympathetically when I explained the voices and strange sensations. He called it post-traumatic anxiety. He prescribed medication and suggested therapy. I wanted to believe that would fix it. For a few days, the pills dulled everything, the whispers, the anxiety, even my sense of time. But then, one night, I woke up gasping for air. The whisper was right beside my ear, calm and firm. "Iris, listen to me." I froze. My entire body went numb. The voice was unmistakably female, low, soothing, and eerily familiar. I turned on the light, heart racing, scanning the room. No one was there. Damon was asleep beside me, breathing evenly. I whispered his name, but he didn't stir. The voice came again, closer this time. "He's hiding something." My breath caught. My rational mind screamed that it was a dream, a trick of my imagination. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next morning, I tried to tell Damon about it. He put down his coffee and looked at me with concern that quickly turned into irritation. "Iris, stop speaking nonsense," he said flatly. "You're scaring yourself." His words hit harder than I expected. For the first time, I saw something behind his calm annoyance. Maybe even fear. But of what? Of me? Of what I might discover? Over the following week, the whispers grew bolder. They began appearing during the day. I'd be brushing my teeth or cooking dinner, and I'd hear, "Don't trust him." Once, I was in a meeting at work, and the voice interrupted my thoughts so clearly I almost screamed. I could feel myself unraveling, second by second. I started keeping a journal of every whisper, every strange occurrence, dates, times, what was said, how I felt. I told myself it would help me track my mental state, but a part of me was gathering evidence, even if I didn't know for what. One night, I decided to test it. I sat in the living room, all lights off, phone recording app running. I whispered into the darkness, "Who are you?" For a long time there was nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then, faintly, so faintly I thought I imagined it, came the reply, "Find the drawer." My skin prickled. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I replayed the audio, half expecting to hear nothing. But the whisper was there, soft, distorted, but undeniably real. "Find the drawer." I didn't tell Damon. Instead, I started watching him. I noticed things I hadn't before, the way he locked his home office when he left, the phone calls he took outside, the sudden late-night business trips, and every time he left the room, the whisper would return, urging me to look closer. By then, I couldn't tell if I was terrified or exhilarated. I'd been dismissed, drugged, and doubted, but something inside me was awakening, a quiet determination to uncover whatever truth hid behind Damon's calm smile. That night, I sat up in bed long after Damon had fallen asleep. I stared into the dark, feeling the silence press against my ears. I whispered into it again. "What drawer? What do you want me to find?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then, right beside me, as if the words were breathed straight into my ear, the voice replied, steady and sure. "Ask him about the contract in his drawer." The whisper called me by my full name and mentioned Damon's secret. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed that morning, still clutching my phone from the night before. My hands were trembling. The voice on the recording hadn't just said something random, it had given me a clear instruction. Ask him about the contract in his drawer. I didn't even know Damon had a contract drawer. When Damon left for work, I walked straight into his office. The smell of his cologne lingered in the air, mixed with that faint scent of printer ink and paper. Everything was neat, too neat. He'd always been obsessive about organization, but this felt staged, like he wanted me to see nothing. I checked every drawer until I found one locked at the bottom of his desk. My pulse quickened. I remembered a ring of keys he kept in his coat pocket. I ran to the hallway, grabbed the coat, and rifled through until I found them. One key fit perfectly. The drawer slid open with a soft click. Inside were several folders and a thick envelope labeled Property Transfer Agreement. My stomach dropped. I unfolded the papers and saw my own name printed across the top next to Damon's. It stated that I had agreed to transfer ownership of our house entirely to him and his business partner, a man I barely knew named Peter Kessler. The signature at the bottom was mine. Except, it wasn't. I stared at it, tracing the forged lines with my finger. My real signature curved slightly at the end, but this one stopped abruptly, almost mechanical. Someone had copied it poorly, but just well enough to fool a casual glance. I snapped pictures of every page with my phone and stuffed the folder back exactly where I'd found it. My heart pounded so hard I thought Damon would hear it echo through the walls. When he got home that evening, I pretended everything was normal. I made dinner, smiled when he spoke, and waited until we were both sitting at the table. Then, as calmly as I could, I said, "Damon, what's the property transfer agreement in your office?" He froze mid-bite. For a split second, his expression flickered guilt, surprise, anger, I couldn't tell which. Then, his mask returned. He chuckled softly and said, "What are you talking about?" "I saw it," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "It has my forged signature." He leaned back in his chair and studied me like I was something broken. "You've been taking those pills the doctor gave you, haven't you?" "Of course I have. Maybe not enough," he muttered, then sighed dramatically. "Iris, you've got to stop this nonsense. You're not well. You're imagining things again." Imagining things? I wanted to scream, to throw the folder in his face, but I couldn't let him know I'd taken pictures. I just nodded and said, "Maybe you're right." He smiled, satisfied, and changed the subject. But I could feel the air between us shift. He knew that I knew. The next day, I called my sister. "Liana, what would you do if you found proof someone forged your name?" She hesitated. "Proof? Iris? You mean Damon? I think he's hiding something. Something serious. Iris, I know you're scared, but you need to be careful. Don't accuse him without evidence." "I have evidence," I whispered. And a voice told me where to find it. There was silence on the other end. Then she said softly, "You need help, Iris." That hurt more than Damon's denial. The whispers didn't stop. They became clearer, more persistent. I started hearing them even at work. During meetings, I'd catch faint echoes of that same female tone, calm, familiar, almost protective. "He's lying," it would say. "Don't let him erase you." I began recording everything. Every whisper, every noise, every time the lights flickered. I wanted proof, something tangible that would show I wasn't losing my mind. One night, while Damon was asleep, I sat in the living room with my phone recording. The voice came again, saying something new this time. "He's not working alone." The tone was urgent, almost frightened. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Who is he working with?" I whispered back. There was no answer, just static. Later that night, I listened to the recording through my headphones, trying to make sense of the noise. That's when I heard something I hadn't noticed before. Underneath the static, faint but distinct, was another sound, another voice. It was Damon's. He was whispering to someone. I paused the audio, heart pounding, then replayed it again and again, turning up the volume. His voice was low, deliberate. I could only make out fragments. She's close. Can't know yet. Handle it soon. He was talking about me. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring into the darkness, my phone clutched in my shaking hands. The whispers weren't random. They weren't hallucinations. Someone was manipulating me or trying to reach me. The next morning, I showed the recording to my coworker Naomi. She was one of the few people I still trusted. After listening, her face went pale. "Iris, that's not just background noise. Someone's talking on that tape." "I know. Damon says I'm imagining it. But this is real." Naomi hesitated, glancing around. "If your husband is doing something shady, you need proof that can't be dismissed. Cameras, recordings, timestamps, something undeniable." She was right. I needed evidence no one could argue with, not Damon, not the police, not even Liana. That night, I ordered a set of small hidden cameras online and installed them around the house while Damon was out. One in the living room, one near his office, and one in the hallway facing our bedroom door. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. When Damon came home, he looked at me for a long moment. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "You feeling better?" "Much better," I lied, forcing a smile. He leaned down, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good. I like you calm." I wanted to recoil, but I didn't move. I just nodded and said goodnight. The next morning, before he woke, I checked the footage on my phone. My stomach twisted as the first video played. The timestamp showed midnight. Damon had been in the living room, but he wasn't alone. He was standing beside a woman. She was laughing softly, her head tilted just like mine. Her voice sounded exactly like me. When I played back one of the recordings, I heard Damon's voice in the background. And then I realized, the woman he was whispering to sounded just like me. I pressed play and realized Damon wasn't alone in the room that night. I remember staring at my phone screen, the faint blue glow flickering across my face in the dark. The video showed Damon standing in the living room, his posture relaxed, his voice calm. He wasn't whispering to himself, as I'd hoped he might be. He was whispering to her. The woman standing just a few feet away. The woman who looked exactly like me. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of glitch. Maybe the camera had caught my reflection in the glass window. But when I leaned closer, I saw the truth in the details. The way her hair moved when she laughed, the way her fingers brushed his arm. She was real. And Damon was smiling at her the way he used to smile at me. I replayed the clip over and over, frozen in disbelief. My throat went dry, my stomach twisted. Every rational explanation, a cousin, a coworker, a look-alike, shattered under the weight of what I was seeing. The woman didn't just look like me. She moved like me, spoke like me, even had that faint scar above her left eyebrow, the one I got when I fell off my bike as a kid. I felt like I was watching my own ghost live a life that wasn't mine. The next morning, I showed Naomi the footage. She watched it in silence, eyes wide, one hand pressed over her mouth. When it ended, she said quietly, "Iris, that's you, but it's not you." "I know," I whispered. "Who is she?" Naomi looked uneasy. "Whatever this is, it's dangerous. Damon's involved in something big. You can't confront him yet." I nodded, though every part of me wanted to storm home and demand answers. But something in Naomi's voice, something in her trembling hands told me she was right. That night, I tried to act normal. Damon came home late, claiming he'd had a business meeting. I asked him if he'd eaten, and he said he had. I watched him move around the kitchen, open the fridge, pour himself a glass of water, completely casual, completely confident. It terrified me how easy it was for him to lie. Later, after he fell asleep, I quietly retrieved my hidden cameras. I wanted to secure the footage somewhere safe before he found it. But when I logged into my cloud storage, the files were gone. All of them. Deleted. Panic clawed at my throat. The timestamps showed they'd been erased at 2:47 a.m. while I was asleep, and Damon was home. He knew. The next day, I called Naomi from work. He found the footage. He deleted everything. She cursed under her breath. "You need to back up whatever you still have. And don't go home tonight." I didn't listen. Some part of me thought maybe I could still reason with him, maybe there was an explanation, however insane it sounded. So I went home, heart pounding, phone recording app already running in my pocket. When I stepped into the house, Damon was in the living room, sitting on the couch with his laptop. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, you're home early." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, work finished sooner than expected." "You look tense." "Just tired. Maybe you should take your medication," he said softly, that same patronizing tone he always used. "I already did," I lied. He studied me for a moment, then stood up and walked closer. His eyes lingered on my phone for a second too long. "You're recording again, aren't you?" My breath caught. He smiled. "You know, Iris, you used to trust me. Then maybe you shouldn't have given me reasons not to," I snapped. Something cold flickered in his gaze. "Be careful what you accuse me of. People already think you're unstable. If you keep this up, they'll put you somewhere for your own safety." I took a step back. "You wouldn't dare." He leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. "Try me." That night, I packed a small bag and left. I went straight to Naomi's apartment. She took one look at me and said, "You can stay as long as you need." I barely slept. My mind replayed every moment of that video, the woman's smile, Damon's laughter, the way she tilted her head exactly like I did. It was impossible, yet undeniable. The next morning, Naomi helped me comb through Damon's social media, his emails, anything public. That's when we stumbled across something strange, a corporate photo of him with several business partners, taken a few months ago. In the background, blurred but visible, was that same woman. Standing beside him. "Whoever she is," Naomi said. "She's been in his life for months." "Then why does she look like me?" I whispered. Naomi didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said it all. For the next few days, I kept trying to piece things together. The whispers returned, stronger now, no longer vague or distant. One night, as I sat in Naomi's guest room, I heard it again, that same voice. Soft and trembling. "He replaced you," it said. I froze. "Who are you?" I asked aloud. No response. Only that faint, static hum again. The next morning, I told Naomi what the voice had said. She frowned. "Replaced you? How?" "I don't know," I said. "But I think Damon's trying to make me disappear." Naomi hesitated, then asked, "Do you want to find her? The woman in the video?" I looked at her, the question hanging heavy in the air. "Yes," I said finally. "I need to know who she is." So that became our plan. Naomi and I would track the woman down, find out where she came from, and why she was pretending to be me. We spent hours online searching company, directories, background databases, even reverse image searches using the frame from the video. Nothing. No matches. It was as if she didn't exist. But that night, just as I was about to give up, the whisper came again. This time, it was clearer than ever, desperate, almost pleading. "Iris," it said, "don't stop. You have to find me." I sat upright in bed, clutching my phone. The voice wasn't taunting me anymore. It sounded like it was coming from someone who needed help. I didn't know what was real anymore. But one thing was certain, whoever that woman was, she wasn't just an imposter. She was connected to me in ways I couldn't yet understand. And Damon, he was at the center of all of it. The woman's voice from the recording was the same one I'd been hearing in my head, and I realized the whispers weren't haunting me. They were begging me to find her. I was staring at myself on the screen, laughing with my husband. That image burned itself into my mind like a scar. The woman wasn't just similar, she was me. Every movement, every gesture, every tilt of her head mirrored my own. It was as if someone had taken my body, my voice, and my life, and molded them into a flawless imitation. I couldn't stop shaking as I replayed the video again and again. Each time, it became harder to convince myself that what I was seeing wasn't real. Naomi sat beside me, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Iris," she whispered. That's you." "I know," I said, my voice barely audible. "But it's not." We both sat there in silence. My thoughts spun wildly. Maybe it was deepfake technology, some kind of visual manipulation. But then I remembered the whispers, the contract, the way Damon's attitude had shifted after the accident. This wasn't digital trickery. This was something far more personal, far more deliberate. Naomi finally broke the silence. "You can't go home. If he knows you're onto him, He'll make sure no one ever believes you. I nodded, clutching my phone like a lifeline. I just need to understand who she is. Why she looks like me. The next day, I went back to the house when I knew Damon would be at work. The neighborhood looked the same, calm and quiet, but everything about it felt hostile now. I parked a few houses away and walked up the driveway. My key still fit the door, though my hands trembled as I turned it. Inside, the air felt different, heavier. Damon's cologne was stronger, mixed with something floral that wasn't mine. My heart pounded as I moved through the house, searching for any trace of her. In the kitchen, I saw a coffee mug with lipstick on the rim, the same shade I used to wear. My lipstick, my brand. It was like walking through a parallel version of my life. Everything familiar, yet wrong. My reflection in the window made me jump. For a second, I thought she was behind me. I found a silk scarf draped over the back of a chair. I didn't own one like it, but it smelled faintly of my perfume. My head spun as I pieced it all together. Damon had replaced me, not just emotionally, but physically. He was building a version of me that he could control. My stomach turned. I needed to get out before he came home. As I moved toward the door, I noticed a flicker from the corner of the room, one of the hidden cameras I'd installed. I pulled out my phone and opened the app. To my shock, the feed was still active. I pressed play. The timestamp showed the previous night. Damon walked into the living room, and moments later, she followed. They were laughing, talking quietly. She sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you think she suspects anything?" she asked. My voice, my tone, everything identical. Damon smiled. "It doesn't matter. Soon, she won't be a problem." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. My pulse roared in my ears. I ended the recording, shut off the feed, and ran. When I got back to Naomi's, I felt like my skin didn't fit right anymore. "He's planning something," I told her. "Something to get rid of me." Naomi looked pale. "You need to go to the police." "With what?" I snapped. "A video of a woman who looks like me? They'll think I'm insane." She hesitated, then said quietly, "Then we'll find her ourselves." Over the next few days, Naomi and I became detectives. We combed through Damon's company website, employee directories, even the city's public records. Nothing. Whoever this woman was, she didn't officially exist. But then, Naomi found something buried deep in a local business registration database, a new company listed under Damon's name, Wavecrest Holdings. There were two managing partners, Damon Waverly and someone named Aria Moore. The name hit me like a physical blow. I clicked the attached ID photo. My face stared back at me. My face, smiling beneath the name Aria Moore. "She's using your photo," Naomi whispered. "Or maybe," he gave it to her. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Damon's late-night calls, the secret contract, the fake signatures, all of it connected. He'd found someone to impersonate me, to replace me. I couldn't just sit back and let it happen. The next evening, I drove downtown to the address listed for Wavecrest Holdings. A sleek glass building towered over the street. The lobby was nearly empty, except for a security guard and a receptionist. "I'm here to see Aria Moore," I said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist typed for a moment, then frowned. "I'm sorry. There's no one by that name here. She's a partner," I insisted. "Check again." The woman gave me a polite but puzzled look. "Ma'am, there's no record of her. Are you sure you have the right building?" I turned and walked out, frustration boiling inside me. I was halfway down the street when I froze. A reflection in a storefront window caught my eye. Someone across the road, standing still, watching me. It was her. She wore dark glasses and a coat, but I could tell. The way she stood, the way her hair caught the light, it was me. I stepped forward. "Hey!" I shouted. She smiled. My smile then turned and walked quickly toward a waiting car. Damon's car. I ran, but traffic blocked me. By the time I reached the curb, they were gone. When I got back to Naomi's apartment, I was shaking. "I saw her," I said, breathless. "She was with Damon." Naomi's eyes widened. "Iris, if she's real, we need to get the police involved now." I looked down at my phone, replaying the short, blurry clip I'd managed to record as they drove off. The image was grainy, but clear enough to see her face, my face leaning close to Damon's. My mind spun as I whispered, "She's living my life." Naomi's voice trembled. "What are you going to do?" I looked straight at her and said, I'm going to find her. And I'm going to find out why she stole me. I decided to find that woman myself. I followed my own face through the city streets. That's the image that still haunts me, the way she moved just ahead of me, weaving through crowds like a reflection that refused to disappear. After that night when I saw her get into Damon's car, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours replaying the blurry footage, zooming in on every frame, every movement, every flicker of her expression. She wasn't nervous or hurried. She looked comfortable, like she belonged in my life. Naomi sat beside me at the kitchen table, her laptop open, eyes scanning through files. We need to find where she lives, she said. If she's real, and I think she is, she must have a trail somewhere. Addresses, accounts, something. But everything we've checked so far leads nowhere, I replied. Wavecrest Holdings, the contracts, even her supposed ID. It's all fake. Naomi leaned closer, her tone firm. Then we'll go deeper. Every company leaves digital breadcrumbs, even shell ones. For the next 2 days, we hardly left her apartment. We lived on coffee and adrenaline, our screens glowing in the dark as we dug into Damon's world. Wavecrest Holdings wasn't just one company, it was a web of smaller entities, all registered under slightly altered names and foreign addresses. Buried among them was a recurring signature, Aria Moore. That name again, my stolen shadow. Naomi eventually traced a payment from one of those accounts to a luxury condominium complex downtown. That's our best lead, she said, her voice low. Unit 1409. It's under her name. I stared at the address on the screen, my pulse quickening. Then that's where she is. We drove there that evening. The condo tower shimmered with mirrored glass and sleek lines, the kind of place Damon used to joke we'd buy when his company made it big. I felt like I was walking straight into a dream I wasn't supposed to see. We parked across the street and waited. Hours passed. The city lights blurred outside the windshield, rain streaking the glass. I was about to give up when Naomi suddenly whispered, I think that's her. I looked and there she was. She stepped out of the lobby, wearing a beige coat, her hair pulled back exactly like mine used to be. My heart lurched into my throat. Without thinking, I opened the car door. I have to talk to her. Iris. Wait. Naomi's voice faded as I crossed the street. Hey! I shouted. The woman stopped. Slowly, she turned toward me, and for a second, I was staring into my own face. Same hazel eyes. Same faint scar by the eyebrow. Even the same nervous smile I used to practice in mirrors. She didn't look surprised. She looked amused. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. My voice trembled. Who are you? Her lips curved into a knowing smile. You already know. No, I don't, I snapped. You're pretending to be me. You're taking back what was stolen, she interrupted. Isn't that what you wanted too? Her words hit me like ice water. What are you talking about? But she didn't answer. She just tilted her head, my exact mannerism, and said, You weren't supposed to see this yet. Then she turned and got into a black car waiting at the curb. I caught a glimpse of the driver's face. Damon. The car sped away before I could react. I stood frozen in the rain, watching the taillights vanish into the distance. My reflection in a puddle stared back at me, wet, trembling, and terrified. When I got back to Naomi's apartment, she wrapped me in a towel and made me sit down. You saw her? You actually spoke to her? Yes, I whispered. She knew me. She knew everything. Naomi's brow furrowed. What did she mean you weren't supposed to see this yet? I don't know, I said. But Damon was there. He's helping her. Naomi clenched her fists. Then we need to expose them. All of it. We spent the next morning printing every document we had: the forged contract, screenshots, company records, the photos of Aria. Naomi suggested going to the police, but I knew how that would end. A woman claiming her husband was conspiring with her lookalike? They'd call it delusion. Instead, we found a lawyer. His name was Mr. Dalton, a seasoned man with kind eyes and a voice that carried weight. When I told him my story, he didn't laugh or frown. He just listened. When I finished, he said, If everything you're telling me is true, this is identity fraud on a scale I've never seen. But I'll need proof. I handed him the photos, the contract, and the remaining recording. He studied them in silence. This signature's definitely forged, he said finally. And if this woman is using your likeness legally, we can subpoena company records to expose how. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope flicker inside me. "So, you believe me?" He nodded. "I believe something's very wrong here. Let me start digging." Over the next few days, Mr. Dalton sent updates quietly, cautiously. He confirmed that Aria Moore was indeed listed as a shareholder in multiple companies tied to Damon's name. But her identification documents were barely 3 months old, with no previous records before that date. "She's not just using your image," Dalton said over the phone one evening. "It looks like she was created using it." The word sent a chill through me. Created? I'll explain more once I have everything. For now, stay safe. Don't go home. But safety was a foreign concept now. I was already being erased, I could feel it. My emails stopped working. My access to the bank was suddenly restricted. When I called customer service, they said my name didn't match the account information anymore. Naomi's voice shook when I told her. "They're deleting you, Iris." That night, we tried to log into my mortgage records, but the property was no longer under my name. It now listed Aria Moore as the registered owner, same address, same details, same signature. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Naomi whispered, "Oh my God, they actually did it." The truth crashed over me all at once. Damon hadn't just replaced me emotionally or physically, he was erasing me legally, piece by piece. My life, my home, my name, all rewritten under someone else's face. I grabbed my purse and stood. "I'm going there." Naomi caught my arm. "Iris, don't. It's not safe." "I don't care. That's my house." I drove through the city like a ghost, headlights blurring through the rain. When I reached the driveway, I saw the porch light on my porch light, and through the window, silhouettes moving inside. I got out, ran to the door, and tried my key. It didn't fit. I tried again. Nothing. Through the glass, I saw Damon walk by, holding a wine glass, laughing softly at something. And then she stepped into view, my double, wearing my sweater, standing in my living room. My knees buckled, my world tilted. I pounded on the door, screaming, "That's my house, Damon, it's me!" Neither of them looked up. The locks had changed. But when I arrived home, my key didn't fit the lock anymore. It was as if I'd never existed. The moment the key refused to turn, I felt something inside me snap. I twisted and pushed until my fingers hurt, but the lock wouldn't budge. My house, the one I had helped decorate, the one I'd painted and furnished with love, had shut me out completely. Through the glass, I could still see Damon and the woman who looked like me moving around as if they owned the place. Rain began to fall, soaking through my clothes, but I didn't move. I just stood there on the porch, staring through the window. My reflection mingled with hers. We were two versions of the same woman, one living, one displaced. When Damon finally noticed me, he froze. For a long, tense moment, we stared at each other. Then, without a word, he reached out and pulled the curtains shut. That single motion cut me out of my own life. I stumbled back, heart pounding, tears mixing with the rain. I tried calling him straight to voicemail. I called again and again until my phone battery died. When I finally dragged myself to Naomi's car, my body felt numb. She took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. She just started driving. Back at her apartment, I couldn't stop shaking. I changed into dry clothes and sat on the edge of the couch, staring blankly at the floor. Naomi brought me a blanket and a cup of tea. "Iris," she said softly, "you can't go back there. It's my home," I whispered. "My name is on everything." "Not anymore," she said carefully. "If they've gone this far, they've already started replacing you on paper." Her words made my skin crawl. The next morning, I tried to log into my online banking account. The password worked, but the account name didn't. A message popped up on the screen. "This account is inactive. Please contact customer service." When I called, a woman politely informed me that the identity associated with that account had been closed 2 days ago at my request. "My request?" I repeated. "I didn't close it." "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "The request was verified using your identification. I didn't authorize that. I'll need you to verify your identity before I can assist." She asked for my social security number. When I gave it, she paused, then said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. That number appears inactive in our system." My stomach dropped. "Inactive?" "Yes. It looks like it's been reassigned." That word reassigned echoed through my skull. How could an identity be reassigned while I was still breathing? Naomi sat beside me as I hung up. They're wiping you out, Iris. They're removing every trace of you. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, then we fight back. We spent the rest of the day contacting everyone we could, banks, insurance companies, even my HR department at work. Every call ended the same way. Confusion, sympathy, and finally, disbelief. My employee ID was no longer valid. My medical records were transferred to a new patient file. Even my driver's license number pulled up a different name. Aria Moore. It was all under her. By the end of the day, I felt like a ghost. Every trace of Iris Waverly was fading from the system. Naomi paced the room, muttering, "This isn't just identity theft. This is coordinated." That's when I called Mr. Dalton. He answered on the first ring. "Iris, what's wrong?" "They're deleting me," I said. "Everything, my accounts, my records, even my ID. They're all under her name now." Dalton was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Come to my office tomorrow. Don't go anywhere alone tonight." I didn't sleep. I lay awake on Naomi's couch, listening to every creak and hum of the apartment. At 3 a.m., I heard something that made my blood run cold, a faint buzzing sound, then a voice, my own voice. "Iris," it whispered through the dark. "Stop fighting. You'll only make it worse." I sat up so fast the blanket fell off me. "Who are you?" I demanded. No answer. Just that same quiet static, followed by my voice again. "You can't win." Naomi came running from her bedroom, panic on her face. "What happened?" "She's in my phone," I said, my voice shaking. "The voice, it's using my recordings." Naomi grabbed the phone and shut it off. "We're talking to Dalton first thing in the morning." When we arrived at his office, he already had a stack of papers waiting. "I've been digging," he said, gesturing for us to sit. "And what I found confirms what you've been saying." My heart pounded. "What did you find?" He laid out 2 sets of documents on the table. "The first is your original identification, tied to your records before the accident. The second is a new identity created 3 months ago, Aria Moore. The biometric data in her file matches yours almost exactly. Fingerprints, facial structure, everything." I stared at the papers in disbelief. "How is that possible?" Dalton leaned forward. "I think someone inside Wavecrest Holdings did this. They used your accident as an opportunity to create a duplicate identity, one that could be manipulated without raising suspicion," Naomi whispered. "So Damon planned this?" Dalton nodded slowly. "He couldn't have done it alone, but yes, it points back to him. The documents list him as a trustee on Aria's identity registration." I felt my breath catch. "Trustee? That means he's controlling her records?" "Exactly," Dalton said. "And if my theory's right, he's using that to erase you. But there's more." He slid another paper across the table, an insurance claim dated 2 days before my accident. The beneficiary was listed as Damon Waverly. The claimant's name, Iris Waverly, deceased. Naomi gasped. I stared at the page, unable to process the words. "Deceased?" Dalton nodded grimly. "Your husband declared you dead, Iris, 2 days before your crash." I felt the room tilt. My pulse thundered in my ears. He planned it," I whispered. Dalton's voice was steady but urgent. "We can build a case, but we need more. We need proof of intent, something that ties Damon directly to this scheme. Emails, recordings, anything." Naomi reached out and squeezed my hand. "We'll find it." Dalton gave a small nod. "And Iris, don't go anywhere near him. If he realizes you're still a threat, he might try to finish what he started." The warning sent a chill through me, but I managed to nod. "I won't." That night, back at Naomi's, I sat by the window watching the city lights flicker below. Somewhere out there, Damon was living comfortably with the woman who had stolen my life. And I, legally dead, digitally erased, was barely clinging to proof that I ever existed at all. I whispered into the glass, my voice trembling. "You can erase my name, you can take my house, but you can't take me." Behind me, Naomi spoke softly. "We'll make him pay for what he's done, Iris, I promise." But when Dalton called the next morning, his voice was shaking. "Iris," he said, "there's something else you need to know. There's evidence your husband staged your accident. The crash that nearly killed me wasn't an accident at all." When Dalton said those words, the world seemed to fade around me. I could hear his voice on the other end of the phone, calm but heavy, as if he was choosing each syllable with care. "Iris," he said quietly, "I've found something that changes everything." I clutched the phone tighter. What do you mean? What did you find? Dalton exhaled slowly. The mechanic's report from the night of your accident, it was falsified. I got the original file. The brake lines on your car were cut. My breath caught. Cut? Yes. Deliberately. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The memory of that night flooded back, the rain, the blinding lights, Damon's voice telling me to take the longer route home. I'd thought it was bad luck, fate, coincidence. But now it all aligned into something far darker. Dalton continued, his voice firm. And it gets worse. I traced an insurance claim filed 2 days before the crash. It was signed with both your names, yours forged, of course. Damon claimed compensation for a fatal vehicle accident before it even happened. I felt dizzy. My knees gave out, and I sank onto the edge of Naomi's couch. He was planning to kill me, I whispered. Naomi's face turned pale. Oh my God, Iris. Dalton's voice softened. He intended to collect the payout and use it to finalize the transfer of your assets under Aria Moore's name. You were never supposed to survive. I pressed my palm against my chest, trying to steady the panic rising in me. So the accident was part of his plan? Yes, Dalton said grimly. He needed a clean slate, a new identity to replace yours. When you didn't die, he changed tactics. My mind spun. That's when the whispers started, I murmured. That's when everything shifted. Dalton hesitated. You said those whispers began after you came home from the hospital? Yes. Why? I think Damon planted something, he said. He might have been using voice recordings or hidden devices to make you doubt your sanity. Psychological destabilization classic. Manipulation tactic. I wanted to deny it, but deep down, I knew he was right. The whispers, the flickering lights, the phones ringing in the middle of the night, it was all too calculated to be random. Damon had been conditioning me, making me question my own reality. Naomi clenched her fists. We can take this to the police now, right? This is enough. Dalton paused. Not yet. We need undeniable proof that Damon orchestrated it. I'm working with a forensic analyst to trace the source of the recordings. If we can find his connection to the planted devices, we'll have everything. He promised to call back as soon as he had results. After I hung up, Naomi and I sat in silence. The rain outside drummed steadily against the window, the sound eerily similar to that night, the night that should have been my last. I trusted him with everything, I said softly. And he was planning my death. Naomi placed a hand on my shoulder. He underestimated you, Iris. You survived. That's your weapon. Her words gave me strength, but fear still crawled beneath my skin. I couldn't stop replaying the details of the crash in my head. Damon had insisted we take the scenic route by the cliffs because it was less traffic. I'd noticed him glancing at his phone every few minutes, his knuckles tight on the wheel. Then, out of nowhere, the car had sped up even though I wasn't pressing the gas. I remember, I said slowly. The brakes weren't responding. I thought it was hydroplaning, but Naomi's eyes widened. He tampered with it before that night. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Every tender moment after the accident, his visits to the hospital, his gentle reassurances were performances. He'd sat beside me, pretending to care, while probably wondering how he'd failed to finish the job. Later that evening, Dalton called again. I found something else, he said. The insurance payout Damon filed was redirected to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. That account is connected to Wavecrest Holdings. My stomach twisted. So the company he built with Aria was funded with your death money, Dalton finished. Naomi covered her mouth, horrified. Dalton's tone hardened. This is enough to start a legal case, but we need more to make it bulletproof. If we can get Aria's voice on record, anything that links her to Damon's plan, it could expose the entire operation. I hesitated. You mean, talk to her? Yes. If you can find her and record your conversation, it could be the breakthrough we need. Naomi immediately protested. No way, that's too dangerous. Iris, she's involved in all of this. You don't know what she's capable of. I have to, I said quietly. I need to hear it from her. I need to know why. Naomi looked at me like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She knew I wouldn't stop. That night, I drove to the same condo building where I'd last seen Aria. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, but determination overrode fear. If I wanted my life back, I had to confront the person living it. When I reached the building, the lobby was quiet. I approached the front desk, trying to sound calm. I'm here for Aria Moore, I said. The receptionist looked up, startled. You mean, Miss Waverly? The name hit me like a hammer. What did you say? She's listed as Aria Waverly in our system. Did you want me to call her Unit? I forced a smile. No, that's all right. I'll come back later. As I turned to leave, a voice behind me said, You don't have to go. I froze. That voice, my voice. I turned around slowly. Aria was standing there, her expression calm, her eyes sharp. You're persistent, she said. I stared at her, speechless. You changed your name. She smiled faintly. It's our name, isn't it? My pulse raced. Why are you doing this? Why are you pretending to be me? I'm not pretending, she said softly. I'm becoming. The way she said it sent a chill straight through me. I just want to talk, I said. Please. She glanced toward the security guard, then nodded toward the parking garage. 5 minutes. Downstairs. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but I followed anyway. The dim lights cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Aria stood near a pillar, her face half hidden in shadow. Why are you helping him? I demanded. Do you even know what he's done? Her expression flickered. For the first time, she looked uncertain. You don't understand, Iris. It's bigger than him. Bigger than both of us. What does that mean? I asked. Before she could answer, a car engine echoed through the garage. Aria's eyes widened. She dropped my phone from her hand, my exact model, and whispered, You shouldn't have come. Then she ran. I picked up the phone and stared at the screen. It was unlocked, and a video was still playing my face, recorded as I slept. Damon's voice whispered in the background, Make sure she doesn't wake up. And at that moment, I knew the truth. I wasn't supposed to be alive at all. Aria spoke, and I heard my own voice coming out of her mouth. That moment still lives in my mind, looping like a nightmare I can't wake from. It wasn't just the words she said, it was how she said them. The rhythm, the tone, the breath between sentences, everything about it was me. It was like hearing a recording of myself from somewhere deep in the past, twisted into something hollow and foreign. After she ran from the parking garage, I grabbed my phone from the ground and replayed the last seconds of the video she'd dropped. The footage showed my hospital room after the crash. My body was unconscious, my face pale, tubes everywhere. Damon's voice whispered near the camera, calm, rehearsed. She won't remember a thing when she wakes up. Then the video cut out. I didn't even realize I was crying until Naomi's voice cracked through the phone, asking where I was. You have to get out of there, she said. Right now. I drove straight back to her apartment. My hands shook on the steering wheel the entire way. I felt like I was driving away from my own skin. When I arrived, Naomi grabbed me by the shoulders. What happened? I told her everything, the garage, the voice, the video. The way Aria had looked at me like I was an intruder in my own story. Naomi's face hardened. She knows too much, Iris. Whatever she's involved in, it's not just about Damon. This is bigger. I nodded numbly, my mind spinning. She said it was bigger than both of us. What does that even mean? Naomi sat down across from me. It means she's part of whatever Damon started. And we need to find out how. We spent the rest of the night combing through every piece of data on the phone Aria had dropped. It was identical to mine, same wallpaper, same photos, even the same message history with Damon. Only, some of the messages weren't mine. In one, Damon had texted her, You're doing great. She'll start breaking soon. Another read, Once the neural sync is finalized, you'll have everything. My heart stopped when I saw the next one. It was a voice memo labeled simply, Training Session 4. I pressed play. Static filled the room for a moment, then came my voice, except not. It was me, speaking lines that made no sense, reciting sentences, repeating them over and over. My name is Iris Waverly. I am safe. I am loved. Damon loves me. I am not afraid. Each repetition grew flatter, more mechanical. Naomi whispered, What the hell is this? I shook my head, horrified. It's like they recorded my voice and made her practice it. We kept digging. There were dozens of files labeled neural, vocal, identity merge. One video stopped me cold. It showed Aria sitting in a clinic chair, electrodes attached to her temples, a technician giving instructions. The voice in the background? Damon's. Your speech patterns are nearly identical now, he said. Let's test emotional response next. Naomi slammed the laptop shut. I can't watch this. I just sat there, trembling. Everything I thought I knew about my life had shattered into something monstrous. Damon hadn't just replaced me, he had engineered my replacement. By morning, Dalton came by, his face grave when he saw us. We showed him the files. He listened to a few seconds of the voice training recording, his expression tightening. "This is criminal," he said quietly. "He's not just committing fraud, he's committing identity reconstruction. That's biometric theft and illegal neural replication." "Can this be used in court?" Naomi asked. Dalton nodded. "Yes, but only if we can authenticate the source. These look like they came from Damon's company servers. If we can trace the data, we'll have proof." "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. "He can't get away with this." But before Dalton could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. 3 knocks. Firm. Unmistakable. Naomi peeked through the peephole and went pale. "It's the police." They came in calm, controlled, professional. "Are you Iris Waverly?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "You're under arrest for the murder of Aria Moore." The words didn't register at first. "What?" I stammered. "No, she's alive, I saw her last night." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "We have a signed witness statement placing you at the scene. Her body was found in a dumpster behind your husband's office this morning." I looked at Dalton, my heart pounding. "Tell them, she's not dead." Dalton stepped forward calmly. "Officers, my client has been under threat for weeks. This has to be a setup." They ignored him. One officer gently took my arm, cuffed me, and read my rights. The cold steel around my wrists sent a shock through me. As they led me out, Naomi shouted, "We'll fix this, Iris! We'll prove it!" The ride to the station was a blur. The detective who questioned me was kind, but skeptical. "Your husband tells us you've been unstable since the accident," he said. "He mentioned auditory hallucinations." I stared at him, speechless. "He's lying. He's setting me up. Check the files on that phone." He folded his arms. The phone we found was wiped clean. No files, no messages. My stomach dropped. Dalton arrived hours later and secured my release on bail. When we left the station, he handed me a copy of the coroner's preliminary report. "According to this," he said grimly, "Aria's fingerprints and DNA match yours exactly. Every strand, every cell." I stopped walking. "That's impossible." Dalton looked at me, eyes heavy. "It shouldn't be, but it is." Back at Naomi's, I sat on the couch in silence. My entire body felt hollow. Naomi poured me a glass of water, but I couldn't even lift it. "Iris," she whispered, "this isn't over. They've gone too far. We'll find a way to clear you." Dalton joined us later that evening, laptop open, files scattered across the table. "The autopsy results are inconsistent," he said. "The estimated time of death doesn't align with when you were supposedly seen with her." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "She died before you met her in that parking garage. Which means, whoever you saw, wasn't alive." The room fell silent. Naomi whispered, "Then who was she?" Dalton's jaw tightened. "Someone set this up to bury the truth. But I found something else." He pulled out a USB drive. A few of Aria's files survived in the cloud, including one last audio log. "You should hear it." He pressed play. The voice that filled the room was unmistakable mine, but weaker, strained. "If you're hearing this, it's too late. Damon lied to both of us. He said we'd be one person. He said we'd be whole. But he only wanted control. Please, stop him before he replaces you completely." The recording ended with a sharp gasp, then silence. Dalton looked at me solemnly. "This proves she tried to expose him. Whoever killed her didn't want that message getting out." My throat went dry. "Then Damon did this." Dalton nodded. "And now he's framing you to close the loop." The next day, Aria turned up dead, and the police arrested me for her murder. They said my fingerprints were on the knife. That's how the detective opened the interrogation. No greeting, no warning, just those words, cold and heavy as stone. I sat across from him in the tiny gray room, wrists sore from the cuffs they'd only just removed. The air smelled like coffee and disinfectant. I stared at the table, unable to look up. "That's not possible," I whispered. The detective leaned forward, his expression calm but sharp. "Your prints, your DNA, your hair? It's an open and shut case, Mrs. Waverly." "Stop calling me that," I snapped, louder than I meant to. My voice echoed off the walls. I'm not his anything, and I didn't kill her. He studied me for a long moment. Your husband told us you've been under severe stress since the accident. He said you've been paranoid, hearing voices. My stomach turned. He's lying. He's been lying since the day I met him. The detective's tone softened, like he was speaking to a child. You know, sometimes trauma can make the mind invent things that feel real. You mentioned this woman looked exactly like you. Don't you think that's unusual? I clenched my fists. You think I made her up? You think I killed someone who doesn't exist? He sighed and closed his notebook. We'll let the evidence speak for itself. When they finally released me into Dalton's custody, I was shaking so badly I could barely walk. Outside, Naomi was waiting with tears in her eyes. She rushed to me, hugging me so tightly it hurt. I told them you didn't do it, she said. I told them you couldn't. Dalton led us to his car. We don't have much time, he said quietly. They'll keep building the case while we fight it. On the drive to his office, I stared out the window, trying to piece together the fragments of my life. Arya's face flashed through my mind, my face, pale and lifeless. If her DNA matched mine, if the police believed I killed her, then maybe that was exactly what Damon wanted. He wasn't just erasing me, he was turning me into my own murderer. At Dalton's office, he spread out the documents across the table. The evidence is staged, he said. Whoever did this knew exactly what to plant and where. The knife had your fingerprints, but not your blood. That's deliberate. Too clean. Naomi frowned. So Damon framed her to bury everything else? Dalton nodded. He's orchestrating this perfectly. He tells the police she's unstable, provides a narrative, and lets the evidence fill in the rest. I sat down, exhausted. Then what do we do? Dalton looked at me with quiet resolve. We fight. We prove that Arya was part of a larger scheme, and that her death ties directly to Damon. But for that, I need access to her files again, the ones that were wiped from the phone. If there's even a trace left, it could lead us back to Wavecrest's servers. Naomi leaned forward. Can't the police do that? Dalton shook his head. They won't. They already believe Iris is delusional. To them, Arya is her fantasy. I buried my face in my hands. That's exactly what Damon wanted. Naomi touched my arm. Then we find another way. Over the next few days, Dalton pulled every legal string he could. He subpoenaed Arya's autopsy report and requested access to her last known digital footprint. Meanwhile, Naomi and I stayed in her apartment, blinds drawn, too afraid to leave. Every time I checked the news, I saw my name. Marketing manager, accused of killing doppelganger. They printed my photo beside hers. 2 identical faces, one alive, one dead. I barely recognized myself anymore. Dalton called 2 days later. I got the autopsy results, he said. Something's off. I met him at his office that evening. He slid the report across the desk. The coroner's report says time of death was between 6 and 8 p.m. the night before the police claim she was seen with you. I frowned. That's impossible. I met her after 9. She was alive. Dalton nodded. Exactly. Which means someone doctored the timeline. Naomi leaned over the report. So whoever you saw that night, wasn't Arya? Dalton finished. At least, not anymore. A chill ran through me. What are you saying? That Damon used her somehow, after she died? Dalton rubbed his temples. If he had access to the identity data and neural recordings we saw earlier, it's possible he used them to recreate her digitally, partially. We don't know the extent of it yet. But he's covering tracks faster than I can follow, Naomi whispered. So, the whispers, the voices, it could have been Arya trying to reach you. I looked up sharply. You mean she was trying to warn me? Dalton hesitated. It's possible. Her last recording clearly indicated she was afraid of him, but we need to prove it. He opened his laptop and played a new audio clip. A faint hum filled the room, followed by static, and then a voice. Arya's voice. Damon, she said. If this doesn't work, she'll know. She'll hear everything. The sound made my skin crawl. Dalton paused the playback. This was found on Wavecrest's backup server by one of my contacts. The metadata shows it was uploaded after her death, which means someone, most likely Damon, was still using her voice after she was gone. I felt cold all over. So, the whispers weren't just recordings meant to gaslight me. They were pieces of her, of Arya. Dalton nodded. She turned on him near the end. That's why he silenced her and framed you to finish it. I couldn't breathe. My entire life had become a loop of her voice and mine, merging until I couldn't tell us apart. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. He killed her. He wanted to replace me, and when she fought back, he killed her too. Dalton placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, and now we make him answer for it. He spent the next hour explaining the legal strategy: digital subpoenas, forensic verification, public exposure. But I could barely focus. My mind kept returning to that one chilling detail, the voice that spoke my name, the voice that called me from the dark. When Dalton finally stood, he said, "I'm presenting the preliminary evidence tomorrow. If the judge approves, we can force Damon to hand over his servers. That will expose everything." Naomi asked, "Do you think the court will listen?" Dalton gave a thin smile. "Once they hear the recordings, they'll have no choice." He packed his files, then paused. "Iris, I know you're scared, but you need to be ready. The truth is darker than what we've seen." As he left, I looked at Naomi. "Do you believe her voice is still out there?" Naomi nodded slowly. "I think she's trying to help you finish what she started." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat awake listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. Then, faintly, through the stillness, I heard it again, my own voice, whispering from my phone. "Don't let him win." I picked it up with shaking hands. The screen was blank, no call, no message. But the voice came again, clearer this time. "He'll use the truth against you unless you get to it first." Then Dalton called with breaking news. He'd found a new recording, and when he played it, Arya's voice spoke Damon's name, after she was supposedly dead. The dead woman's voice was still speaking. That's what Dalton said when he called me the next morning, his voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. "Iris," he began, "I just listened to something that shouldn't exist. You need to come to my office now." Naomi drove me downtown, both of us silent the whole way. When we arrived, Dalton was pacing in his office, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. On his desk sat his laptop, screen glowing with a paused audio file. He looked up as we entered. "I ran a deeper forensic scan of the backup files we pulled from Wavecrest's server," he said. "I found fragments of voice data that shouldn't have survived. When I reconstructed them, this is what came out." He hit play. At first, there was just static, soft, rhythmic, like breathing. Then came the unmistakable sound of her voice. "Damon," she whispered, her tone trembling. "It's not working. She can hear me. She hears everything." I froze. The blood drained from my face. Naomi clutched my arm. Dalton stopped the playback and turned to me. This was uploaded 2 days after her recorded time of death, and that means one of two things. Either the timestamp was falsified, or someone else was using her voice to continue the deception. I swallowed hard. "Or she's still alive." Dalton shook his head. "No, Iris, I've verified the autopsy photos. Arya Moore is dead. But her voice, her digital signature, has been replicated." Naomi frowned. "Replicated how?" Dalton took a deep breath and gestured to the screen. Wavecrest wasn't just a holding company. It was a cover for an experimental research division. Damon helped fund one focused on biometric cloning, voice replication, and neural mapping. Essentially, digital identity duplication. My heart pounded in my ears. "You're saying he created a version of me?" "Not just a version," Dalton said. "He tried to build a programmable you. Someone who sounded and behaved exactly like you but without emotion, without resistance." Naomi gasped. "That's why Arya existed. She wasn't random. She was the prototype," Dalton said quietly. "Damon used your accident as the testing ground. He collected your data while you were in the hospital, your voice, your memories, even your therapy recordings. Then he transferred them to Arya." I stared at him in disbelief. "Transferred? As in, uploaded my mind?" "Not your mind," Dalton said gently, "but enough to mimic it. Enough for her to sound like you, think like you, become you." I pressed my hands to my temples. My thoughts were spinning too fast to catch. "Then why kill her? Why end it?" Dalton's expression darkened. "Because she rebelled. The logs show she started modifying files on the server, copying data to an external drive. She was trying to expose him." Naomi whispered. "She turned against him." Dalton nodded. "That's why she was silenced. But she left traces behind encrypted fragments that didn't delete completely. That's what we're hearing now." He opened another file. This time, Arya's voice came through more clearly. He told me she was gone, she said. But I saw her. I saw her standing outside the house. He said it was a hallucination. But I know the truth. I'm the one who's not real. The recording ended abruptly, replaced by a faint hum that made the hair on my arms rise. I stared at the screen, trembling. She realized she wasn't me. Dalton nodded slowly. And she tried to warn you before it was too late. For a moment, none of us spoke. The hum from the laptop filled the silence, low and haunting. Naomi finally broke the quiet. Can we use this in court? Dalton straightened. Yes, it proves two things. That Damon was experimenting with illegal human data, and that Arya's death was directly tied to his cover-up. But it's more than that. It shows intent to manipulate and impersonate you. He moved to his printer and handed me a thick stack of documents. These are the motion filings I'm submitting today. Once the judge reviews this evidence, Damon will have to surrender his digital archives for forensic examination. If what I suspect is true, it will expose the entire operation. I nodded, my mind racing. What do you suspect? Dalton hesitated. That the voices you've been hearing weren't hallucinations or random recordings. They were fragments of Damon's experiment, an echo network. When Arya started rebelling, she used the system to send warnings directly to you. Every whisper, every message, every nonsense phrase, they were all her. I felt the air leave my lungs. She was trying to save me. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. She died trying to protect you. Dalton looked at me carefully. Which means her final message, the one embedded in the server, could hold everything we need to bring him down. But we have to access it during the trial, under court order. If we move too early, he'll destroy it. I nodded slowly, gripping the table. Then, we make sure he doesn't see it coming. Dalton smiled faintly. That's exactly what I plan to do. The following week was chaos. Reporters camped outside Naomi's apartment. My face plastered across headlines. The wife who killed her double. Every time I turned on the TV, there I was, painted as a deranged woman obsessed with conspiracy. Damon was everywhere giving interviews, speaking calmly about mental health struggles and his late wife's delusions. He was charming, sympathetic, believable. Naomi muted the television one night and glared at the screen. He's rewriting history in real time. He's good at that, I said bitterly. He's been doing it since the day I met him. The next morning, Dalton called with final instructions. Tomorrow's the hearing, he said. Stay composed, answer only what's asked. Once I present the recordings, the court will see the truth. I tried to sound confident. Do you really think this will work? I don't think, he said. I know. The day of the hearing felt like walking into a battlefield. The courtroom buzzed with journalists and cameras. Damon sat across the room, perfectly composed in a navy suit. His expression that of a grieving husband forced to endure public scrutiny. When our eyes met, he gave a small, almost pitying smile. Dalton leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't react. Let the evidence speak." The judge called the session to order. Damon's lawyer launched into his opening argument a performance about love, tragedy, and my mental collapse. He described me as a woman haunted by grief, constructing fantasies to justify my own actions. Then it was Dalton's turn. He walked to the center of the courtroom, his voice steady. "Your Honor," he said, "the defense calls attention to a voice recording submitted as Exhibit A." He pressed play on his laptop. The speakers filled with the sound of static, then Arya's voice, clear as glass. "If you're hearing this, Damon killed me." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow. Damon's lawyer stood abruptly, shouting objections, but Dalton ignored him. "This recording," Dalton said firmly, "was recovered from Wavecrest's secured servers time-stamped after Arya Moore's death. It proves premeditation, manipulation, and obstruction of justice." I turned toward Damon. For the first time, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted toward the evidence table. Dalton glanced back at me and gave the faintest nod. He wasn't finished, because he had one final recording to play, and this one would silence the entire courtroom. The lawyer played the final recording. It started as a low hum, the kind of sound you almost feel before you hear it. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Dalton stood in the center, one hand resting on the edge of the table, his voice calm but unyielding. "This," he said, "is the final piece of evidence. It was recovered from the encrypted archives of Wavecrest Holdings and authenticated by 2 independent experts. It's the only recording Damon Waverly couldn't erase. The speakers crackled softly, and then a familiar voice filled the air, my own. I froze. I hadn't heard that tone since before the accident, before everything began to crumble. Damon, please, the voice said, trembling. Don't do this. I can't breathe. There was a muffled struggle, the scrape of shoes, a loud crash. Then his voice calm, cold, unmistakable. You won't remember any of this, Iris. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge banged her gavel to restore order. But the damage was done. The truth had finally spoken for itself. I sat there in silence, my body trembling as my recorded voice continued. Why are you doing this? Damon, please stop. He laughed that same warm, charming laugh I used to love and said, because I can't afford another mistake. The file ended abruptly. The sound of that laughter echoed through the room like a ghost refusing to leave. Dalton's voice broke through the stunned silence. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, this recording was made the night before Iris Waverly's supposed accident. It proves premeditation, manipulation, and attempted murder. Damon's lawyer stood, shouting, that audio could be doctored. It could be. The waveform analysis confirms authenticity. Dalton cut in sharply. It was extracted from the metadata of Damon's own personal drive. He turned to the judge. Every file, every timestamp leads back to his system. The judge leaned forward, her expression stern. Mr. Waverly, do you have an explanation? For the first time, Damon faltered. His perfectly rehearsed composure cracked, his jaw tightening as his eyes flicked toward me. Your Honor, he said slowly. That audio, it's out of context. My wife was unwell. She was hearing things that weren't there. Dalton folded his arms. Then why did your system contain an encrypted folder labeled Project Echo with her recorded voice, her hospital files, and experimental mapping data? Damon's face went pale. That's classified business research. Using your wife's biometric data without consent? Dalton shot back. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Dalton, continue. Dalton nodded. Your Honor, we have established that the defendant used Iris Waverly's medical data to construct a digital replica of her under the alias Aria Moore. When that project failed, he staged Iris's death and replaced her identity with Aria's. When Aria attempted to expose him, he silenced her. Every step of this plan is documented in Wavecrest's internal correspondence and the recordings recovered from his server. The courtroom erupted again. I could barely breathe. Naomi, sitting behind me, squeezed my hand tightly. Dalton continued, voice unwavering. The whispers Iris heard weren't delusions. They were automated voice triggers linked to Wavecrest's AI system, an algorithm designed to destabilize her psychologically so she'd appear unstable. But the code was flawed. Aria tampered with it before she died, embedding warnings in the recordings. She tried to save the real Iris. I felt tears sliding down my face. For months, I'd questioned my sanity. For months, I'd wondered if the whispers were just in my head. But now, in front of everyone, the truth was undeniable. The judge turned to Damon. Mr. Waverly, you are accused of fraud, identity theft, and attempted murder. Do you wish to say anything in your defense? Damon's jaw clenched. This is absurd, he snapped. She's lying. She's manipulating you all with doctored files and fake evidence. Dalton raised an eyebrow. And yet, you confirmed the existence of Project Echo just now. Damon froze. The courtroom broke into murmurs again. The judge silenced them with a firm strike of her gavel. Enough. We will reconvene after recess to determine preliminary charges. As the bailiffs moved to escort Damon out for holding, he turned his head toward me, his eyes burning with fury. You think this is over? He hissed under his breath. You don't even know what you're part of. I met his gaze, steady this time. No, Damon, I said quietly. You don't know what you've lost. When he was gone, I sank into my chair, shaking with exhaustion and relief. Dalton placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did it, Iris. We did it. Naomi rushed to me as the courtroom began to empty. You're free now, she said, tears streaming down her face. They believe you. But deep down, I couldn't shake the hollow ache in my chest. Aria's voice still echoed in my mind. He told me she was gone, but I saw her. That recording, her plea, It wasn't just evidence, it was a goodbye. After the session, Dalton met me in the hallway. "There's something I didn't play in court," he said quietly. I frowned. "What do you mean?" He pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. "It's another file, one we found buried in the archives after the main recordings. I didn't want to introduce it until we verified it." "What's on it?" I asked. Dalton hesitated. "It's your voice again, but there's something strange about it. I think you should hear it privately." Naomi and I followed him into a quiet conference room. Dalton plugged the drive into his laptop and pressed play. The voice that filled the room was calm, steady mine, but older, colder. "If you're hearing this, it means the system completed the loop. Damon isn't the only one who built it. There are others. Project Echo was never just his. It's still running." Naomi's mouth fell open. What does that mean?" Dalton paused the recording, his expression grim. "It means this operation extends beyond Damon. There are more people involved." A chill crawled down my spine. "You mean there could be more versions of me?" He nodded slowly. "Or worse versions of others, all created the same way." The room fell silent. Outside, I could hear reporters shouting my name, cameras flashing. But inside, all I could think of was that voice, my voice warning me from somewhere beyond my own life. Dalton closed his laptop and looked at me. "For now, we focus on getting justice. The rest, we uncover later." I nodded, though unease coiled in my stomach. "Then let's finish this." We left the courthouse that day to a wall of cameras and chaos. But for the first time in months, I didn't care. The truth was finally out, and Damon's empire was starting to crumble. Still, as the car pulled away and the crowd faded behind us, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't finished. Because in the static between radio stations, faint and distant, I could swear I heard my own voice whisper, "There's one more thing you all need to hear." Dalton pressed play again, and this time, everyone heard my own voice. The courtroom had gone silent. Reporters leaned forward. Even the judge seemed frozen in place. Dalton stood by the projector, one hand trembling slightly as he clicked to open the next file. His voice was low, deliberate. "Your Honor, this final recording was discovered within a secondary encrypted partition of Wavecrest's main drive. It contains data extracted from Damon Waverly's private server." The sound began faintly, a low hum followed by static. Then my voice broken, terrified, filled the room. "Help me, please. I can't breathe." A male voice cut in. "Damon's. Smooth, cold. Make sure she doesn't wake up." The courtroom gasped. My vision tunneled. For months I'd replayed the accident in my mind, believing I'd lost control of the car. But now, listening to his calm command, "Make sure she doesn't wake up," it all made sense. Dalton looked straight at the judge. This audio was recorded the night of Iris Waverly's crash. It was buried among encrypted experimental logs labeled Echo Termination. Damon's lawyer jumped to his feet. "This is inadmissible. There's no proof of authenticity." Dalton turned sharply. "The file's checksum matches the metadata on the insurance documents, and the timestamp aligns with emergency call logs. It's genuine, Your Honor." The judge nodded slowly. "Continue." I watched Damon. His face, usually composed, had drained of color. His jaw clenched, but his eyes refused to meet mine. For the first time, he looked small. The recording continued muffled sounds, a crash, my own scream echoing through the speakers. "Please!" Then his voice again, cold as glass. "It's done. She won't remember." Dalton stopped the playback. Silence hung in the air like a held breath. "Your Honor," Dalton said, "this man not only orchestrated the attempted murder of his wife, but he then exploited her recovery by manipulating her into believing she was insane. He used her stolen biometric data to create a digital replica Aria Moore, and when that failed, he killed the replica to frame her for the crime." Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge's gavel struck once, silencing the murmurs. Dalton turned toward me. "Mrs. Waverly, do you have anything you wish to say?" My heart pounded in my chest. I stood, my legs trembling. "I don't know if words can describe what it's like to be erased while you're still alive," I began, my voice shaking but steady. "To have everyone tell you that you're crazy, that the truth is just in your head. But I was never insane. I was manipulated, gaslighted, used." I looked directly at Damon. "You told me to stop speaking nonsense. You said no one would believe me. But they heard me now, didn't they?" He didn't answer. his hands clenched into fists. Dalton nodded toward the judge. "We rest our case." The judge turned to Damon. "Mr. Waverly, given the overwhelming evidence and your refusal to testify further, this court orders your immediate detention pending trial for attempted murder, fraud, identity theft, and obstruction of justice." The gavel came down like thunder. The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting, cameras flashing. 2 officers approached Damon, cuffing his wrists. He tried to speak, his voice cracking with desperation. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to go like this. They're still out there." "Who's still out there?" the judge demanded. But Damon only laughed a broken, manic sound. "You think I built this alone?" The officers dragged him away before he could say more. Naomi grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "It's over, Iris. You did it. You're free." But as the doors closed behind Damon, I couldn't shake the words he'd shouted. "They're still out there." Later that day, the courthouse steps were a storm of lights and voices. Microphones shoved toward me, reporters shouting questions. "Iris, how does it feel to be vindicated? Do you think your husband will face life in prison?" I said nothing. I just kept walking, Naomi shielding me from the chaos. When we reached Dalton's car, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "You were remarkable today," he said. "You spoke truth, and people finally heard it." I gave a faint smile. For a long time, I thought my voice didn't matter, but it saved me. He nodded. "And it'll help others too. Once the verdict is finalized, your story will change laws." For the first time in months, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The nightmare was over. The whispers were silent. But that night, as I sat by the window in Naomi's apartment, watching the city lights flicker below, the silence began to feel wrong. Too still, too heavy. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. A distorted voice spoke faint. "Female. Iris." I froze. "Who is this?" The line crackled. "You spoke the truth. Now it's my turn." The call ended abruptly. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. The number had no traceable origin. Naomi came out of her room, rubbing her eyes. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Just a wrong number." But I knew it wasn't. That voice, it sounded just like Aria. The next morning, Dalton called to confirm that Damon had officially confessed to several charges under questioning. "He broke down after the hearing," he said. "Mentioned something about continuing the project, but the authorities are verifying that now." I didn't respond right away. My mind was elsewhere. On that voice. On the possibility that Aria's consciousness, her digital echo, still existed somewhere in the system. "Iris," Dalton said softly. "You've won. It's time to start living again." I wanted to believe him. I really did. That afternoon, Naomi and I went to the courthouse one last time for the sentencing hearing. Damon didn't look at me once. He only stared straight ahead as the judge listed his crimes. When it was over, and the bailiffs led him away, he turned slightly, his lips barely moving. I couldn't hear him, but I could read the words. "It's not over." A chill ran through me. After the hearing, Dalton and I stood outside under the gray sky. "You're free now," he said, softly. "Your name is cleared, your accounts, your identity all restored." "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, as if I were speaking through layers of fog. He smiled faintly. "They told you to stop speaking nonsense, but your words ended everything." I looked past him at the courthouse steps where reporters were still gathered, their microphones glinting under the weak sunlight. "No," I said quietly. My words started something. That night I sat alone in Naomi's apartment. I opened my laptop, intending to write about everything: the trial, the lies, the voice that had haunted me. But when I powered it on, a file appeared on the screen. No sender, no source, just a single title: Echo, Restart. My finger hovered over the mouse, the screen flickered, and then, for the briefest moment, I heard it again, my own voice whispering through the speakers. "They told you to stop speaking nonsense, Iris, but you were never the only one who could speak." I thought I'd finally escaped her shadow, but there she was. It happened a week after the sentencing. Life was slowly starting to resemble something normal again, at least on the surface. The papers called it the trial of the decade, and strangers on the street whispered when they recognized me, but I was trying to move on. Naomi had gone back to work, Dalton was closing the last of the legal paperwork, and I had begun therapy to deal with everything that had happened. For the first time in months, I could walk outside without feeling like eyes were following me. I could breathe without flinching at the sound of my own name. But peace, I was learning, doesn't always mean safety. That afternoon, I was at the courthouse to sign the final reinstatement documents for my identity, my bank accounts, property, and records officially restored to Iris Waverly. It was supposed to be the final step, the end of everything. As I left the clerk's office, the fluorescent lights flickered. The faint hum of the hallway echoed in my ears, and for a moment, I thought I heard it again, the whisper that used to haunt my nights. Iris. I stopped walking. The air felt colder suddenly. I told myself it was just nerves, but when I looked up, my breath caught in my throat. At the far end of the hallway, standing perfectly still among the crowd, was a woman. Her hair fell over her shoulders the same way mine did. Her coat, her posture, even the faint curve of her smile, they were mine. I blinked hard, certain it was a trick of the light. But when she looked up, I saw her face clearly. It was Arya. My knees nearly buckled. She was supposed to be dead. I'd seen the autopsy report, the photos, the evidence. Yet there she was, alive, or something that looked exactly like her. Before I could call out, she turned and started walking toward the exit, calm and unhurried. I ran after her, pushing past people in the hall. "Arya!" I shouted. "Stop!" She didn't turn. When I reached the doors, she was already outside, weaving through the crowd. I burst out onto the courthouse steps, scanning the sidewalk. For a moment, I thought I'd lost her. Then, I saw her reflection in a passing car window still there, still watching me. "Arya!" I yelled again. She turned, just for a second, and smiled faintly. Then she disappeared into the crowd. By the time I reached the corner, she was gone. I stood there, trembling, my heart racing. I didn't know if I'd just seen a ghost, or if the whispers were coming back to finish what they started. Dalton found me there minutes later. "Iris, what's wrong?" "She was here," I gasped. "Arya, I saw her." He frowned. "That's impossible." The body was verified. DNA confirmed. "I don't care about reports, Dalton. I saw her with my own eyes." He studied me carefully, searching for doubt. "Are you sure it wasn't someone who just looked like her, a coincidence?" "No," I said firmly. "It was her. The way she moved, the way she smiled, it was her." Dalton rubbed his temple, his lawyer's composure faltering for the first time. "If she's alive, then everything changes. Her existence would invalidate the case, Iris. Damon's entire conviction was built on her death. I didn't care about legal complications. I only knew that something wasn't over." "Then we find her," I said. "We find her before anyone else does." That night, Naomi and I combed through hours of courthouse security footage. On one camera, I caught a glimpse of her, just a sliver of a frame, walking down the hallway before turning the corner. But there was something strange about the video. Her reflection didn't move in sync with her body. The reflection turned toward the camera and smiled while she kept walking straight. Naomi leaned back, her face pale. "That's not possible." I stared at the frozen frame. "It's not the first impossible thing that's happened to me. We tried tracing her through surveillance cameras outside, but once she left the courthouse steps, she vanished completely. No taxis, no credit card trail, no facial recognition hits. It was like she'd appeared just to remind me she existed and then disappeared again. Days passed, and I tried to convince myself it was stress, a trick of trauma. But then strange things started happening again. One night, I woke up to my phone glowing on the nightstand. A notification blinked. "New file received, echo 2. My stomach twisted. I hadn't connected my phone to any network since the trial. I opened the file cautiously. It was a video. At first, the screen was black. Then an image faded in me, sitting in the same bed, staring at the camera. My voice followed, eerily calm. "They told you to stop speaking nonsense." But maybe nonsense was the only language Truth understood. I dropped the phone. The video kept playing, my double tilting her head in that familiar skill. "Away. He's gone, Iris." But they're not. The project lives. The screen went dark. Naomi rushed in when she heard me scream. I handed her the phone, but the file was gone. Completely deleted. No trace left. Dalton arrived the next morning, his face tight with concern. "Someone breached your digital security again," he said. The same encryption pattern we found on Wavecrest's servers. So Damon wasn't working alone, I said quietly. Dalton nodded grimly. No. And if Arya is still alive or if there's another version of her, they could be continuing the project. I rubbed my temples, the same headache I used to get when the whispers began creeping back. I thought it ended with him. So did I, Dalton said. But something's wrong. The files from his confiscated servers, someone accessed them last night. Remotely. From where? Naomi asked. Dalton hesitated. From inside this city. We all exchanged uneasy glances. That evening, I took a walk downtown to clear my head. The air was crisp, the streets glowing with neon reflections. I passed a cafe window and froze. In the glass, just behind my reflection, was another woman smiling faintly. I spun around. No one was there. My phone buzzed again. Another message. No name. Just one line. You spoke the truth. Now it's my turn. The message was signed the same way as before. Arya. I stood there, surrounded by strangers, my pulse racing, the city spinning around me. I didn't know if it was real, or if the echoes had found a new way to reach me. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Something, or someone, was still watching. And I could feel her, just beyond sight, breathing in time with me. The message was signed, Arya. I used to fear my voice, now it's the only thing that keeps me alive. Months passed after Damon's conviction, but the echoes of what he'd done never really left me. Every sound, every flicker of static in a quiet room, made my skin prickle. Therapy helped, yes, breathing exercises, grounding techniques, trying to re-enter the world as Iris Waverly, survivor. But sometimes, when the nights were too still, I'd hear faint whispers curling through the dark, and I couldn't tell if they were memories or warnings. Naomi moved into a new apartment downtown, one with light pouring in through big glass windows and no dark corners. She insisted I stay with her while I figured out my next steps. You need to start living again, she said. Write, speak, do something with what happened. Don't let it define you, own it. Her words lingered with me, and slowly, I realized she was right. So I started recording. At first it was just therapy. Late-night monologues on my phone, confessions whispered into the dark. I spoke about fear, betrayal, and silence. About how gaslighting can twist truth until you start to doubt the sound of your own name. About how one man's greed had turned my identity into a weapon. Then one day, Naomi listened to one of my recordings. She cried halfway through. Iris, she said softly. People need to hear this. Not just me, everyone. You could help others who've been silenced. I hesitated. My story had been ripped apart by the media. I'd been called insane, delusional, a murderer. The idea of letting strangers hear my voice again terrified me. But then I remembered something Dalton had said the day the trial ended. They told you to stop speaking nonsense, but your words saved you. So, I created a podcast. I called it Echoes of Truth. It wasn't flashy, just me, my microphone, and a quiet room. The first episode was shaky, my voice trembled as I told my story from the beginning, all the way back to the whispers in the dark. I didn't name Damon, I didn't mention Wavecrest. I simply said, this is a story about losing yourself and finding your voice again. Within a week, the episode had over 10,000 downloads. By the end of the month, it hit 1 million. Emails poured in from women all over the world, survivors of manipulation, abuse, psychological gaslighting. They thanked me for speaking, for putting into words the things they couldn't. I read every single one. Naomi and I cried together more times than I can count. Dalton, ever the steady voice of reason, became an occasional guest. He explained how technology could be used to manipulate human consciousness and identity. The digital age, he said during one episode, is both our greatest creation and our most dangerous mirror. The podcast changed everything. For the first time, my voice wasn't something to doubt, it was something people trusted. Something that carried weight. Months later, a listener reached out with information that made my heart stop. She claimed she had worked briefly at Wavecrest Holdings under an alias, and that the Echo project hadn't been shut down completely. Someone else, another investor, had purchased the technology before Damon's assets were frozen. She said the name of the new company, Auric Technologies. Dalton investigated quietly. A week later, he confirmed it. She's right, he told me. The files were transferred before Damon's arrest. Someone else continued the work. I remember sitting in silence for a long time after that, the hum of my computer filling the room. I thought about Arya, her voice, her warnings, her death. Maybe she hadn't been the end of the story. Maybe she was only the beginning. A few weeks later, I took a trip alone. I needed closure. I drove out to the small cemetery outside the city where Arya had been buried. The day was gray, and still, the air heavy with the smell of rain. I brought a single white rose. The grave was simple: Arya Moore, 1991, 2024. Loved and remembered. I knelt down and placed the rose beside the stone. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, quietly, I whispered, "You were never just an echo. You were a voice. You saved me." As I stood to leave, something caught my eye, a folded note tucked behind the gravestone. My heart pounded as I picked it up. The handwriting was familiar, looping, delicate. My handwriting. It read, "Keep speaking, Iris. The world is still listening." I froze. The note had no signature, but beneath the words was a faint symbol, the same spiral pattern that had marked the Wavecrest files labeled Echo. 2. I didn't tell Dalton. I didn't even tell Naomi. Some truths, I realized, had to be lived with quietly. When I got back home that night, I sat at my desk, microphone in front of me, and began recording the final episode of the season. "My name," I said softly, "is Iris Waverly. And if you've followed my story, you know how easily truth can be rewritten. You know how fragile reality becomes when someone takes your voice. But here's what I've learned: truth has an echo. No matter how deep someone tries to bury it, it finds a way to rise. And when it does, it speaks louder than any lie ever could." I paused, my throat tight. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been told that your pain, your fear, your words are nonsense, remember this. Even nonsense has meaning to those who've lived it. Don't stop speaking. The next morning, the episode went live. By evening, it had become the most streamed podcast in the country. Dalton called, his voice full of quiet pride. "You did it, Iris. You turned your nightmare into something powerful." Naomi hugged me that night, whispering, "You changed people's lives." But as I sat alone later, the city lights glowing through the window, I noticed something strange on my computer. My podcast's analytics dashboard flickered. A new listener appeared on the live feed, anonymous, untraceable, tagged only as Echo Origin. Then a new message appeared on the screen. "You spoke the truth. Now let me show you what comes." Next, the message vanished before I could screenshot it. The room went quiet, except for a faint whisper through the speakers. "Iris." This time, though, it wasn't threatening. It was soft, almost warm, familiar. I smiled faintly. Maybe the world wasn't done echoing yet. Maybe some voices, mine, Arya's, would never really fade. I closed my laptop, sat back, and breathed deeply. For the first time in a long while, the sound of my own voice didn't frighten me. It felt alive. It felt powerful. And somewhere out there, I knew someone was listening. Because in the end, even the lawyer had to repeat every single one of my words.